This particular event came out of the People's Assembly we did on December the 5th, okay, at St. John's. And what we were hoping to do in a couple of our sessions was to get some sort of movement going. In other words, we have to act because others are not going to act. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So we were hoping to have some events where we could get some action going. And this is one of them. There's going to be a lot of content thrown at you, a lot of discussion, a lot of campaigning. But we want you to leave knowing there are things that you can do. The two areas that we have isolated for this is the climate change and war, which I will lead off with, and then Canada and Afghanistan, which John Etches will take care of in the second part. So what I'm going to try to do for about 10 minutes is sort of gobble up some research on, just to prove that the increased military presence in the world is true and is having absolutely terrible effects, including on global warming, climate change, and so on. It seems to be that war is a solution for all the problems that exist in the world, at least many of them, having to do with national security, resource extraction, resource protection, any strategic conflict that's involved. War is the way to settle it. Primarily it's the United States because they are the most powerful, but the Americans do have allies. So you have to consider NATO, who have a new role, and Canada, increasingly, is part of this particular game. I think there are some real reasons for this. To a lot of us, this is getting peace by using the military. Sounds like an oxymoron of some kind, but it's exactly what's happening. To keep the world at peace by using your military force. So there seems to be an attempt to remodel the world that's increasingly dangerous to the United States and the Western allies and some of the Eastern allies tied to the States. And it's a question of control, using military means. Lots of reasons. There's the geopolitical. Being in Afghanistan and Iraq allows the Western forces to keep watch over everything, keep things under control, and other globalized world, especially economically, is a reason to get out into the world. Oil, basically the center of all this particular action. Also it's the sort of become a traditional role for the United States, especially in some of the more declining Western nations, to take on more of a presence in the world. There are allies out there, such as Saudi Arabia, who need protection. Nuclear nations are on the rise. You've got North Korea, you've got Iran, so there's another excuse for going there. And it's all a question of power. Unfortunately, there are a few other reasons too. Race, there are racial elements here. Religion. Nations seem to be increasingly poor at diplomacy. Like, why bother? Diplomacy which one time was an art, it's just almost abandoned. And something I think we need to look a lot more at, particularly for the case of the last couple of years, just the financial control that's going on. It's not just military, it's the financial control and the corporate expansion going on through the world by military means. And of course, they're seeking more resources, more oil, more natural gas, more anything. Control, 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 and unfortunately, from 10 years ago, revenge. But it's all under the umbrella of national security. Regarding Canada, we are not exempt, of course. We have sent more troops abroad. Our military spending has increased substantially. We would rather do that than spend our money domestically on necessary services and the traditional peacekeeping role that we have always done. We've gone somewhere else. Economically, obviously, there's so much private corporate investment. It's just all over the place. A benefit, perhaps, would be employment, particularly in some of the arms-selling nations, United States, Britain, France, and so on. It's a way to keep employment going, particularly at a time like now. Arms sales, of course, there's a lucrative business there. Arms sales to the allies who were there. Corporate power, period, which is the way to control things in the global sense. And it requires a military, and it requires a lot of energy. And that's basically our point here. The military is there to decrease the amount of energy, which of course increases climate change problems. The financial interests, of course, are out there. They're printing money all over the place, loaning money everywhere, and diverting it from necessary domestic needs. And the sad part is, these wars, and there are lots of them, they don't even have to be won. They don't even have to be winnable. Just wage them and be there. And complicit, of course, is the media, with support, maybe not so much overt, but some of the autocratic countries that we support, the media is completely under control. But even in the United States, you have NBC, owned by General Electric, which is a defense contractor. Greenhouse gases and oil. Unfortunately, what we're doing is we're using huge amounts of oil to protect our oil supply. It's sad, but that's what it is. A few stats. The U.S. military, for example, uses 320,000 barrels of oil every day. And that doesn't include some of the related things they do with their allies, or the privatized functions that go on, or huge military supplies to our allies. The official costs as of last month for Iraq and Afghanistan wars have now reached $1.1 trillion. The U.S. defense allotment is $700 billion in 2009. That was just the allotment. It has increased. And it's estimated that probably because of the military expenditures and the overreaching of the United States in this case, $164 billion is expected to be added to the debt in 2010. All this is not just extracting the oil, it's transporting it, it is storing it, it is protecting it, and all costs money. And of course, if we're going to run out, we have to get new sources. The Tarzans in Canada, offshore, which of course in the Gulf of Mexico is the story of 2010. We have to keep going, so that keeps the military, Western military going. And as you heard about 10 minutes ago, emissions go unreported if it has to do with national security. So we really don't know how bad it is, but we have a pretty good idea. Climate change. Here's a comparison for you. In the U.S., for example, you can compare $1 trillion annually for the military. Now, compare that to $100 billion for climate change funding that arose from the Cancun conference. Now, but the $10 billion, or the $100 billion is over 10 years. It's only promised, and it's from all the developed countries. So compare climate change with war. The horrible results, and it tends to be really bad injustice, environmental injustice, because all this harm tends to be on the nations, not us. It tend to be on the nations who are poor and dispossessed. Chemicals, burning oil continually, radioactive dust, depleted uranium, extreme heat, always extreme heat, mass desertification everywhere, destroyed ecosystems, pathogens spreading, thus global warming increases. In fact, 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, there was a study done to find out what was the biggest threat to the United States regarding national security. And it was climate change. The authors of that report, the Pentagon itself. And something you might want to just take a look at later. I didn't have time to get at it. We're concerned about methane hydrates and eventually coming out of the ground. That's much worse than carbon dioxide and should be increased regarding war. But also, it is believed that even better fuel could come from that. So the energy drive could increase even more. Now, I feel this is very counterproductive. You just wonder why they're doing it with all the harm that's happening to themselves. The West is suffering also. The climate change, global warming has increased, and the military dollars have increased at the same time, and it affects everybody, and including the West and the United States. And I don't think they're prepared for it. I don't think the nations are prepared for this. The American war debt, and the war debt for other countries has increased dramatically. That money is not being spent domestically. Canada, we have declining revenue. It is deliberate on the part of our government. And at the same time, the military expenditures have gone up. Okay, that's a given. 20-year plan. They're going up, other revenues are dropping down. Just the harm of so many veterans, so many healthcare needs, the grief from deaths, the global hatred of some of the Western nations, not just Bush and Harper, other nations also. And then you add to that continual fossil fuel supply and use. So what we have is a natural acceleration of military spending. It's out of control. It just can't be stopped. Well, maybe we can stop it. It's also creating a new global chaos and disorder out there. And it's both because of the military and climate change. They're connected. We've developed a much more competitive world. People are not cooperating. They're always competing against each other. Some of the sides in this competition are ethnic, even religious. We have shifting alliances where you don't know who your friend or ally is from 5 years to the next. Migrations from all the harm that climate change occurs or military excursions create. People are migrating, usually from rural to urban, but you just don't have homes anymore.